I have always been a lover of words. Ever since I was little, you could find me with a book in my hands, full of words to take me to another world, or the pencil or crayon or my mom's lipstick grasped in my hand, scribbling on whatever service I could find, which would sometimes get me in a bit of trouble, especially if it was my mom's lipstick. I made my first attempt at novel writing when I was in just 3rd grade. Although that didn't quite work out, I would go on to publish my own book of poetry at age 15. Words of affirmation are one of my biggest love languages. And for better or for worse, I remember the things that people say to me for years. Words are a home for me. And I believe that prose will forever swirl in my bloodstream. However, although I made such good friends with my words so early on, there was something about them, something negative, that I wouldn't learn until much later. And that was the power of the words we tell ourselves. I first began battling this power at age 7, when my parents went through a messy divorce, and one of my older brothers would make the first of many suicide attempts. And I learned what that word meant for the very first time. During this process, the words "not enough" became deeply ingrained in my train of thought. Even though every self-help book that my parents had me read, every therapist I saw, every article I looked at told me that this wasn't my fault, the only thing that my 7-year-old brain could understand was that I was not important enough for my parents to want to stay together, or for my brother to want to stay alive. The next time I let these words contaminate my heart was when I was 12 years old in a 6th grade gym room. And if it's been a while since you've been in middle school, I'll give you a refresher on what that looks like. 6th grade gym rooms look exactly like they do in the movies, complete with the flying dodgeballs and knee-length basketball shorts in your school's colors. Ours were green and purple, which were not the most attractive. In my gym class, we had about 200 kids, and we sat in alphabetical order in lines before warm-up started. So I was sitting next to kids that I didn't know super well. However, the boy to the left of me would become one of the most impactful people in my life. Because one day, we were sitting in our warm-ups, it was just a couple weeks into my 6th grade year, and he got really quiet, looked at me really intently, looked me up and down, and goes, "You know, Gracie, you'd be really pretty, if only you weren't so fat." He said those words once, but for the next 3 years of my life, I would tell them to myself on a daily basis. I would tell myself that I did not need food, that skinny felt better than food tasted. I'd memorize the amount of calories in a piece of winter mint extra mint gum, in a single pretzel. I knew exactly how many calories I would burn if I did an extra 50 or 500 sit-ups before bed, an additional 500 push-ups first thing when I woke up. I told myself that the only way to be good enough was to be skinny enough. Just a couple weeks after this 6th grade occurrence, I would tell myself words that held even bigger demons when I first began engaging in self-harm. At 12 years old, I would tell myself that I was nothing without addiction. I would tell others that it was the cat, and then I would take a blade to my skin every time that life began to claw at my heart. At 12 years old, I told myself that I was not strong enough to live without it. But the biggest lie of all wouldn't come until shortly after I turned 15. At this point, I had allowed myself to fall into a place of depression so dark that I could not find any light, no matter how hard I tried. So I told myself that it was okay to set a suicide date, that I had until this date to make one last final-ditch effort at finding happiness. And if I hadn't by then I would have enough time to tie up any loose ends, say my final goodbyes, and it would be okay to end it. I had really tried. The darkest point in my life, I let myself hear the words, "You are not worthy enough of life." No, did I believe it? Just 2 days before the suicide day, I was fully intent on ending it. I knew what I was going to do. I had my letters written. I was ready. And then I saw a social media post by a group called to write love on her arms. They were running a campaign for World Suicide Prevention Day, which just so happened to be the exact same day as my suicide date. And it changed my life. It showed me that an entire nationwide group could have the bravery to speak up about this so publicly, then I could have the bravery to speak up about it in my own little corner of the world. They would paint a message that would override every lie of not good enough, not skinny enough, not important enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough. They would tell me, you are loved. But my battle with suicide and mental illness doesn't end there. Over the past 3 or so years, I have watched as the teen suicide rate in El Paso County has gone from 7 in 2014 to 17 in 2016, and the numbers keep growing. I have watched my news feed as headlines come up, such as third teen suicide in 2 weeks. Suicide strikes again. Paso County, the teen suicide capital of the nation. I have watched as my family and loved ones struggle with losing those they care most about, and in the process, almost lose themselves as well. I've watched as the teen suicide rates go up in every corner of the world, not just ours, as new dangerous games come out and another article is posted, mourning the loss of yet another young life. I have watched as the lights of our children go dark, one by one by one. We have all watched as kids who are supposed to be playing in the rain, achieving dreams, taking chances, are playing with addiction, achieving depression, and taking lives. And we still aren't talking about it. The stigma surrounding suicide and mental illness is suffocating. It is thousands of miles deep, and we very rarely scratch the surface, let alone reach those at the core who are the ones who are dying. So, we suffer in silence. We see the statistics. We see that more people die by suicide than by homicide, in fact, almost twice as many. We see that more teenagers and young adults die by suicide than by cancer, lung disease, heart disease, birth defects, pneumonia, influenza combined. We see that in our nation, there is an average of 5,240 suicide attempts by young people grades 7 through 12 every day. And we still aren't talking about it. When we buy into the stigma that surrounds suicide and mental illness, we are telling our young people and loved ones that this is something they can't talk about, so they don't. And the darkness grows, and another life is lost. And we sit here and we wonder how we didn't see it coming. Why weren't there any warning signs? And all it takes to change this is a simple switch. It takes a switch from viewing suicide and mental illness as something that is dark, unstoppable, and shameful, to something that, although dark, is something that we can take into the open, shine a light on, and unpack together. There are so many things that we can be doing to help those that are sick. And they're not these big, unachievable, intimidating goals. They're small things that have a huge impact. We can advocate for programs in our public school systems that teach suicide prevention. We can ask, hey, are you doing okay? Hey, you seemed a little off recently. You may be feeling suicidal. It's terrifying, I know. It's terrifying not knowing if the answer is yes or no, and not knowing which is scarier. When we ask, we show those who are hurting that they are seen, and if they want to talk about it, they can. We can read up on warning signs, especially those who are parents, teachers, and mentors. When we know what to look out for, we are far better equipped to handle the darkness before our loved ones reach that last step solution. But most of all, we can talk. We can choose to start the story. Because when we talk first, we provide an open invitation for others to step forward as well. We show those who are hurting that we see them, that it's going to get better, that we know what it's like, and we're here for them. When we are brave enough to start, we provide an open invitation for people to stop living in shame and start living in sunshine. I wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self that it was going to be okay. That one day she would be so filled with joy and happiness that her lips would almost constantly be turned up into a smile. That she would live to see the most beautiful sunrises, have the most incredible opportunities, love the most amazing people. That there was a future for her, even if in that moment, tomorrow was the hardest thing to find. It wouldn't get better overnight, no. There would still be relapses and hard days. There would still be days where she goes dark and doesn't know why. There still are. But the difference would be that even on her darkest days, everything would be painted over with the hue of hope. But I can't do that. So instead, I will tell you, and I will beg you to please tell those that you love as well. Tell them these things and extend a lifeline for those who feel as if they are drowning. Encourage them to grab onto your hand. Plant their feet on solid ground. Take a couple more steps. There, they will look around the corner and see everything they thought their life could never be, stretching for miles full of hope and recovery and joy. And most of all, painted across the sky in brilliant colors, they will see 3 words that will change everything. You are loved. Thank you.